My girlfriend's family secret exploded on the night of her sister's wedding, and now I'm trapped in a lie that could destroy us all. I, 28M, thought the biggest challenge in my relationship with Kathleen, 26F, was her family's overwhelming closeness. I was wrong. The closeness wasn't about love. It was about containment. It was a gilded prison, a fortress of tradition and expectation built to keep a secret buried so deep that even Kathleen, the most vibrant resident of that prison, didn't know it existed. We've been together for a year and a half, living in a cozy, book-filled apartment in Portland, Oregon. Her family, the Prescotts, are the picture-perfect Pacific Northwest dynasty. Her father, Robert, is a respected local architect, a man who built his reputation on sleek, modern lines and impenetrable public persona. Her mother, Eleanor, runs a successful art gallery in the Pearl District, curating beauty and chaos with a steely, elegant grace. Her older siblings, Mark and Emma, are both married with picture-perfect kids, living in beautiful, eco-friendly homes within a 10-minute radius of the family estate in the West Hills. They had Friday night dinners without fail, a ritual as unshakable as the tides. Every holiday was a meticulously planned production, and their family group chat was a constant, buzzing hive of shared articles, photos of the kids, and passive-aggressive reminders about family commitments that felt less like invitations and more like summons. I moved here from a loud, loving, and gloriously disorganized family in Charlotte, North Carolina. My people are scattered and relaxed. We call on birthdays, get together for a chaotic, happy Christmas if we can, and otherwise live our lives, secure in the knowledge that our bond doesn't need constant reinforcement. The intensity of the Prescott clan was a culture shock, but I loved Kathleen with a fierceness that surprised me, so I learned to navigate it. I became a regular at the Friday dinners. I smiled through the endless rounds of birthday parties for cousins I barely knew, and I bit my tongue when Eleanor would suggest what Kathleen should wear for a client meeting or where we should vacation. Her recommendations always tinged with the unspoken certainty that her way was the only way. The first crack in this pristine facade appeared about 6 months ago, on a deceptively sunny afternoon. We were at a family barbecue at Robert and Eleanor's sprawling modernist home, all glass and sharp angles that seemed to defy the lush, embracing greenery of the Oregon landscape. The air was filled with the scent of cedar and grilled salmon, and the laughter of Emma's kids echoed across the deck. I went inside to get a fresh round of craft beers from the Sub-Zero fridge, the kind of appliance that cost more than my first car. That's when I overheard Eleanor and Robert arguing in hushed, sharp tones in his study. The door was ajar, just a sliver. Can't keep pretending forever, Robert. She's getting too serious with him. He's from a different world. He's going to want to know about her past. He's going to ask questions we can't answer. Eleanor hissed, her voice a strained whisper that carried a surprising undercurrent of fear. He's not a historian, Eleanor. He's a software developer. He's not going to find anything. It's been 26 years. The paperwork is a non-issue. Just keep her close. Rein her in if you have to, Robert replied, his voice cold, flat, and final, the same tone I imagined he used with incompetent contractors. Rein her in? She's not a child anymore. She's a woman with a life, a career, a mind of her own. She'll always be our child, he snapped, the emphasis on our hitting me with strange force. And we protect our own. That is the end of the discussion. I backed away from the door, my heart thudding against my ribs like a trapped bird. Find what? Pretending what? It sounded so melodramatic, like a plot from a daytime soap opera. I told myself it was probably some weird family financial drama, a hidden debt, a bad investment, or maybe an old scandal, an affair they were hiding. I convinced myself it was none of my business. But the seed of unease was planted, and in the fertile soil of my love for Kathleen, it began to put down roots. The next oddity was the family photos. The entire main floor of their house was a shrine to their perfect life. Dozens of professional photos, all in matching silver frames, charted their journey from a young, smiling couple to the pillars of the community they were today. But as I looked more closely, a pattern emerged that chilled me. There were no baby pictures of Kathleen. There were dozens of Mark as a chubby-cheeked infant, cradled in Eleanor's arms. There was a beautiful, candid shot of a toddler Emma taking her first steps on the very same deck where we now have barbecues. But Kathleen's photographic history began abruptly around age 4 or 5. There she was, a small girl with serious eyes, standing between a beaming Mark and Emma in a matching plaid outfit. But the years before that were a void. When I casually mentioned it to Kathleen one evening as we were washing dishes, she just laughed, a sound I usually loved but that now felt dismissive. "Oh, that," she said, scrubbing a plate with more vigor than necessary. My mom's running joke. She says I was such an ugly baby she couldn't bear to have the evidence on display. She claims I grew into my face around kindergarten. Says it was a real glow-up. She rolled her eyes, a familiar gesture she used whenever her family's quirks became too much. It was a funny, self-deprecating story, and I wanted to believe it. For a while I did, until the pieces started adding up, and the picture they formed was no longer funny. The pressure to conform to their family unit was immense, a gravitational pull that was hard to escape. They expected us at every event, and any deviation was met with a guilt trip, so potent it could power the entire city grid. When I tentatively suggested we spend the upcoming Thanksgiving with my family in North Carolina, Eleanor didn't just get upset. She looked genuinely, physically panicked. The color drained from her perfectly made-up face. "Kathleen has never missed a Thanksgiving," she said, her voice trembling slightly, her hand fluttering to her pearl necklace. "Not one. This family needs to be together. It's foundational. It's important for our stability." She looked from me to Kathleen, her eyes pleading. It seemed like a massive overreaction to a missed turkey dinner. Now, I wonder if she meant her stability, the stability of their carefully constructed world, a world that depended on Kathleen playing her assigned role. The real bomb, the one that shattered the glass house they lived in, was dropped at Emma's wedding. It was a social event of the season for the Prescott family, held at a lavishly appointed vineyard in the Willamette Valley. The air was thick with the scent of Pinot Noir and expensive perfume. Kathleen was a bridesmaid, resplendent in a dusty rose gown. I was seated at a table with various aunts, uncles, and cousins I'd met a dozen times, all of them polished and pleasant. The wine was flowing freely, and the veneer of perfection was starting to show hairline cracks. I found myself talking to Kathleen's great-aunt Agnes, a sharp, witty woman in her late 80s with eyes that missed nothing. She was the acknowledged black sheep of the family because she'd moved to Arizona for 20 years and, as she liked to proclaim with a twinkle in her eye, learned how to breathe without committee approval. She'd had a few glasses of champagne and was in a wonderfully loose-lipped, nostalgic mood. "You know," she said, leaning conspiratorially close to me, her breath a mix of champagne and mint, "you're good for our Katie. She's always had a different light about her. A bit more spark. Must be the water she was born in." She winked. I smiled, playing along. "The water in Portland? I hear it's very pure." Agnes's eyes twinkled, then clouded with a sudden, genuine confusion. She leaned back, her brow furrowed. "No, dear. The water in, well, Medford, I suppose. But no, that's not right either." She shook her head, as if trying to clear cobwebs. "I suppose they wouldn't have told you. The family secret and all. Best left in the past." My blood ran cold. My smile felt frozen on my face. "Secret?" She waved a dismissive hand. Suddenly looking like she'd said too much, the champagne-induced fog lifting to reveal caution. Oh, it's all ancient history. Long before Arcady was even a thought. Robert and Eleanor's first little girl. Little Claire. Such a tragedy. A parent's worst nightmare. They never really got over it. It was like a shadow fell over this whole family. When they brought Katie home a few years later, it was like a light came back on in this house. She saved them in a way. I felt the world tilt on its axis. The chatter and clinking of glasses around me faded into a dull roar. Their first little girl? Claire. Agnes patted my hand, her grip surprisingly strong. Forget I said anything, dear. I'm a silly old woman with too much champagne in her. It's not my story to tell. And you must never, ever mention to Eleanor. To speak of Claire, it would destroy her. It would be cruel. She gave my hand a final squeeze and turned to talk to another relative, effectively ending the conversation. The rest of the wedding was a blur. I watched Eleanor, the picture of maternal grace and composure, laughing with her friends. But I now saw the tension in her shoulders, the way her smile didn't always reach her eyes. I watched Robert, the proud father of the bride, giving a heartfelt, perfectly crafted speech, and I heard the controlled emotion that now sounded like suppressed pain. And I watched Kathleen, my beautiful, vibrant Kathleen, laughing with her cousins, completely oblivious of the ghost named Claire that shared her childhood home, a ghost whose existence explained everything and nothing at all. I couldn't let it go. Agnes's slip of the tongue was the key that unlocked the box I hadn't even known was locked. It connected with the overheard argument, the missing baby pictures, the intense, almost pathological need to keep Kathleen bound to them. The need to know became a physical ache, a constant hum of anxiety in the back of my mind. I started digging. It was a violation of trust. I knew that. It felt slimy and wrong, but the compulsion was stronger than my guilt. I began with public records, late at night after Kathleen had fallen asleep. It was tedious, frustrating work. I didn't even know what I was looking for. A death certificate for Claire Prescott? I searched archive vital records for Multnomah County, and then expanded to the whole state. Nothing. I spent nights scrolling through digitized newspaper articles from 27 years ago. And then, finally, I found it. It was a small, heartbreaking article in the lifestyle section of a local Eugene, Oregon paper. A tiny black and white photo of a grieving young Eleanor and Robert accompanied it. The headline read, "Community mourns. Infant daughter of prominent Portland couple passes." The article stated that Robert and Eleanor Prescott, then living in Eugene where he was finishing his advanced architecture degree, had suffered the devastating loss of their 3-month-old daughter, Claire Elizabeth Prescott, to sudden infant death syndrome. The article offered condolences from the community. There was no other picture. My heart broke for them. This was a tragedy. This profound, unimaginable loss explained so much about their overprotectiveness, their need for control. But it didn't explain Kathleen. The timeline didn't add up. If their daughter Claire died, and the grief was so profound, why were there no pictures of Kathleen as a baby? Why did her history start at 4? Did they have another child immediately after? It seemed unlikely, given the depth of their grief mentioned in the article. The answer, the one that turned my stomach to lead, came from a much darker, more modern source. In a moment of desperation, I used one of those sketchy people search websites, the kind that aggregate data from who knows where. I typed in Kathleen's full name, Kathleen Marie Prescott, and her date of birth. The search returned her current address. Age, nothing surprising. Then, on a wild, chilling hunch, I searched for Claire Prescott with a birth year that would have aligned with the deceased infant. I found nothing. It was as if Claire had been erased. Then I searched for Kathleen Marie Walsh. Walsh was Eleanor's maiden name. I typed it in, paired with Kathleen's birthday. A record popped up immediately. Kathleen Marie Walsh, born on the exact same day as my Kathleen, in a hospital in Medford, Oregon, over 200 miles south of Eugene. The parents listed were Sarah Walsh and Michael Walsh. My breath caught in my throat. This couldn't be a coincidence. It was too specific. I dug deeper, my hands shaking so badly I could barely type. I found an obituary for Sarah Walsh. She died, along with her husband Michael, in a car accident on a rain-slicked highway near Ashland when their daughter was 4 years old. The obituary mentioned she was survived by her young daughter, Kathleen, and her sister, Eleanor Prescott of Portland. The pieces of the horrifying puzzle slammed together with the force of a physical blow. Eleanor wasn't just a doting aunt. When her younger sister and brother-in-law died tragically, she and Robert took in their orphan niece. They didn't just take her in to raise her. They took her. I searched for adoption records, for any legal documentation of the name change from Walsh to Prescott. I found nothing. It was as if Kathleen Marie Walsh had ceased to exist at age 4, and Kathleen Marie Prescott had simply appeared, fully formed, her past neatly amputated. The night I confronted Kathleen was the worst night of our relationship. I showed her the documents I printed out, the obituary for Sarah and Michael Walsh, the People's Search record with her name and birth date listed as Walsh. I showed her the newspaper article about baby Claire. I laid it all out on our coffee table, a tableau of shattered truth. She stared at the papers, her face transitioning from confusion to disbelief, then to a pale, horrified stillness. What is this? What is this supposed to be? What are you trying to say? Her voice was a whisper. Kathleen, I said gently, my own voice thick with a terrible mix of pity and fear. I think Eleanor and Robert are your aunt and uncle. I think your parents, your real parents, were Sarah and Michael Walsh. They died when you were little, and the Prescotts took you in and never told you. They let you believe you were their biological daughter. She laughed, a high, nervous, brittle sound that was nothing like her real laugh. That's insane. That's the most ridiculous, paranoid thing I've ever heard. Why would they do that? Why would they lie about something like that? Maybe because they lost their own daughter. I said, my theory forming even as I spoke it. Maybe they were drowning in grief, and then this happened. A little girl who looked like your mother, their niece, who needed a home. Maybe it started as a way to help, but then they saw a chance to replace what they lost, to have their perfect family again, to fix the broken picture. She refused to believe it. She was furious. She called me paranoid, jealous, accused me of trying to tear her away from the only family she'd ever known, because I felt insecure. She said my own dysfunctional family couldn't understand their closeness. She swept the papers off the table onto the floor, her hands trembling with rage, and ran out of the apartment, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. She went straight to her parents' house. The fallout was swift and catastrophic. Robert showed up at my apartment less than an hour later. He didn't ring the bell. He pounded on the door. When I opened it, his face was a mask of cold, pure fury. He didn't bother with denials. He stepped inside, his presence filling the small space, making it feel claustrophobic. You couldn't just leave well enough alone, could you? He said, his voice a low, controlled snarl that was more terrifying than a shout. You had to go digging up graves, stirring up pain that doesn't concern you. We gave that girl a life, a perfect, safe, loving life. We saved her from the foster system, from a life of grief and uncertainty, from being passed around like a forgotten relic. We are her parents in every way that matters. We change her diapers, we soothe her nightmares, we pay for her education. We, not some ghost from a past she can't remember. But you lied to her. I shouted, my own fear giving way to a righteous anger. Her entire identity is a lie. She has a right to know where she comes from. She had a mother and father who loved her, and you erased them. We protected her, he roared, finally losing his composure, his face flushing a dangerous red. And we will continue to protect her. From you. So here's what is going to happen. If you love her, if you have even a shred of decency, you will walk away. You will never speak of this again. You will tell her you made a terrible mistake, that you were wrong, that you fabricated these documents out of jealousy. You will apologize, and then you will end this relationship. If you don't, I will ruin you. I have the money, the connections, and the reputation to make sure you never work in tech in this state again. I will paint you as an unstable, abusive liar who preys on young women from good families. I will make sure every potential employer sees the restraining order we will file. Think about it. Think very carefully. He left me standing there, trembling with a mixture of rage, fear, and a sickening sense of helplessness. He was powerful. He was connected, and I knew with chilling certainty that he meant every single word. Kathleen came back to me 2 days later. She was a hollowed-out shell of herself. Her eyes were red and swollen. Her usually bright spirit seemed extinguished. She moved like a sleepwalker. They admitted it, she whispered, her voice raspy from crying. She stood in the middle of our living room, not seeming to know what to do with herself. They told me everything. They said they did it out of love, to give me a fresh start, to spare me the pain. They said they were going to tell me when I turned 18. But then, the time was never right. They were so afraid. Afraid I would be hurt. Afraid I would hate them. Afraid of losing me. She looked at me, her expression a devastating turmoil of betrayal, grief, and confusion. You were right. My whole life, my name, my history, it's not mine. It's a beautiful, painful lie. We were trapped in an impossible situation, a gilded cage of their making. If we stayed together and fought this, Robert would carry out his threat. My career, my reputation would be ashes. If we gave in, if I played the part of villain and walked away, Kathleen would be forced to live the rest of her life inside the lie, forever doubting her own reality. And I would be the monster who tried to break up the family. It was a checkmate. For weeks, we lived in a state of paralyzed dread. Kathleen was grieving multiple losses at once. The loss of the parents she thought she had, the loss of the parents she never knew, and the loss of her own unshakable sense of self. The Prescott family, now knowing the secret was out, oscillated wildly between love-bombing Kathleen to win her back, flooding her with gifts, affection, and reminders of their special bond, and subjecting her to periods of icy, punishing silence when she expressed anger or sadness. It was the ultimate emotional manipulation, designed to keep her off balance and dependent. The end, the catalyst for our escape, came from an unexpected source, Great Aunt Agnes. After a particularly brutal phone call with Eleanor, where she'd been accused of meddling, Kathleen, in a moment of desperation, called Agnes back. She told her everything, the documents, the confrontation, the admission, the threats, and Agnes, God bless her sharp-tongued, independent soul, was furious. She called Robert immediately. Kathleen put the phone on speaker, so I could hear. She had a right to know Robert. Agnes yelled, her voice crackling with age and outrage. You and Eleanor have been playing house with a real, live human being. You didn't just give her a life. You stole hers. You stole her grief. You stole her history. You stole the memory of her own mother and father. That is not love. That is possession. It's a sickness. Agnes, it turned out, had kept a box of her late sister Sarah's things. Kathleen's mother's things. She had held on to it for decades, a quiet act of preservation against the Prescott family's campaign of erasure. She sent it to Kathleen via overnight mail. When the box arrived, it was like receiving a message from another world. Inside, carefully wrapped in tissue paper, were photographs of a beautiful, vibrant woman with Kathleen's same sparkling eyes and easy smile, Sarah. There were pictures of her with a kind-eyed, laughing man who had Kathleen's chin and nose, Michael. There were letters between them, filled with mundane details and profound love. There was a birthday card addressed to our darling Katie, on your 3rd birthday, with a clumsy, loving crayon drawing inside that Sarah had labeled Mommy and Daddy and me. And there was a small, tarnished silver locket. When Kathleen pried it open with trembling fingers, inside was a tiny, faded photo of a young Sarah and Michael, their faces pressed together, beaming. It was the proof Kathleen needed. Not the cold, digital data I had found, but the warm, tangible proof of a life lived and loved. It was the evidence that her life before the age of 4 was real, and it was beautiful, and it had been stolen from her. Holding that locket, reading those letters, gave her a strength I had never seen in her before. It was a quiet, steely resolve that settled in her eyes. We didn't confront Robert and Eleanor again. We didn't give them the satisfaction of a dramatic finale. We simply left. Kathleen gave 2 weeks' notice at the graphic design firm where she worked, citing family reasons. I was incredibly fortunate to secure a lateral transfer to my company's growing office in Raleigh, North Carolina. We told no one except my parents, who, to their eternal credit, simply said, "Come home. We have room." We packed what we could fit into our 2 cars, sold or donated the rest, and one gray morning, we pointed our cars east and drove across the country, leaving the rain and the lies of Portland behind us. The threats from Robert came, of course, a flurry of emails, long, rambling voicemails that oscillated between threats and pleading. But faced with our absolute refusal to engage, with our physical distance and our newfound solidarity, his power began to crumble. He couldn't ruin me in the Raleigh-Durham tech scene. He couldn't control a daughter who was no longer within his physical or emotional reach. The fortress walls he had built could not follow us. That was 8 months ago. We live in a small, rented house on the outskirts of Raleigh now, with a big backyard that gets plenty of sun. My family has embraced Kathleen completely. It's not the suffocating, performative closeness she was used to. It's loud, it's messy, it's unconditional, and it asks for nothing in return but her happiness. She started seeing a new therapist here, a specialist in complex trauma, grief, and identity formation. She's learning about her mother, Sarah, through the letters and photos. She discovered Sarah loved to garden. And this spring, Kathleen planted her first vegetable patch, her hands in the soil, connected with a ghost in a way that felt healing. She's slowly, painstakingly, building an identity that is entirely her own, a mosaic pieced together from the mother she lost, the father she can't remember, the woman she was raised to be, and the woman she is choosing to become. We're getting married next fall. It will be in my parents' backyard, with strings of lights hanging from the oak trees, a local barbecue joint catering, and all our new friends from North Carolina. Kathleen doesn't know if she'll invite Eleanor and Robert. She's leaning heavily towards no. She sent them a carefully worded letter after we moved, telling them we were safe, that she needed space and time, and that any future relationship would be on her terms, with a full, unvarnished truth on the table and a commitment to family therapy. They haven't replied. The silence, while painful, has been its own form of answer. The other day, we were sitting on the porch swing, watching the fireflies blink in the twilight. She was looking at a favorite photograph of Sarah and Michael on their wedding day, a candid shot of them laughing, caught in a moment of pure, unadulterated joy. She looked up at me, her eyes clear and calm for the first time in months. "They loved me," she said softly, her voice steady. "I know they did. It's all right here in their faces, in their words. And I get to carry that with me now. That love, that history, it's mine. No one can take it from me again." The family secret did explode, and it did destroy the life she knew. But from the rubble of that beautiful, painful lie, she is building something real, something true, something that is finally completely and authentically hers. And I get to be there, not as her savior, but as her partner, to see it, to support it, and to love the woman she is becoming.